The morning sun gleamed off the marble pillars of Fairhaven Academy, casting long, proud shadows across the manicured lawn. Every inch of the campus screamed prestige, from the ivy crawling up the stone walls to the gold-etched school crest on the wrought iron gates. To the outside world, this place wasn't just a school. It was a factory for greatness. Doctors, senators, CEOs all had walked these halls. Inside, the atmosphere was stifling, charged with invisible lines that divided the students into neat social hierarchies. The academic overachievers, with their neatly highlighted textbooks and sharp gazes, ruled the classrooms. The athletes dominated the field, their laughter echoing down the halls. Then there were the social butterflies, effortlessly gliding through every space, their smiles as bright as their designer outfits. For the rest, students like Mia, it was easier to blend into the background than risk the humiliation of stepping into the spotlight. Mia walked through the halls with her shoulders hunched and her eyes trained on the ground. She wasn't invisible. Not really. People noticed her in the way. They noticed a flickering light bulb. Briefly, before moving on, her comfort came from observing, not participating. From the corner of her eye, she'd watch the cheerleaders rehearsing their flawless routines or the debate team arguing fiercely in the library. But there was one person she couldn't stop watching: Olivia Carter. Olivia wasn't just another popular girl. She was the sun around which the school revolved. Captain of the cheerleading squad, straight A student, and the face of Fairhaven's glossy brochures. Olivia was everything Mia wasn't: confident, admired, and untouchable. Yet, as Mia lingered in the background, she began to notice the cracks in Olivia's armor. The way her smile faltered when she thought no one was looking. The faint shadows under her eyes, poorly concealed with makeup. It wasn't just admiration that kept Mia watching. It was a sense of curiosity, a quiet skepticism. No one could be that perfect. Olivia breezed down the hallway, her blonde hair catching the light like a halo. She moved with an ease that seemed choreographed, flashing smiles at everyone who passed. "Morning, Liv," someone called out. "Looking great today." She responded with a wave, her laugh light and practiced. But Mia saw it, the quick flash of something behind Olivia's eyes. Was it exhaustion? Or something heavier, like dread? As Mia lingered by her locker, Olivia stopped a few feet away, chatting with her friends. Her voice was warm, confident, but her hand clenched the strap of her designer bag with a force that made her knuckles pale. Later that day, Mia found herself walking down the same corridor as Olivia. She kept her distance, her heart beating a little faster. Just as Mia reached her locker, Olivia dropped her water bottle and it rolled toward Mia's feet. Mia bent to pick it up, her hand brushing the cold metal. She glanced up, meeting Olivia's eyes for the first time. "Thanks," Olivia said, her smile faint but polite. For a split second, Mia saw past the facade. Olivia looked tired, vulnerable. "No problem," Mia murmured, handing the bottle back. As Olivia turned and walked away, Mia found herself wondering for the first time if Olivia Carter's perfect life was as flawless as it seemed. Mia's voice narrates over the scene in her head. Looking back, there were signs all along, but no one saw them. Or maybe we chose not to. Perfection is easier to believe in than the truth. The camera lingers on Olivia, her head bent as she walks alone down the hallway. The students around her are oblivious, their laughter echoing in the background. The party was the event of the semester. Held at the sprawling mansion of one of Olivia's closest friends, it was a glittering display of wealth and privilege. Music thumped through the house, and the air buzzed with the energy of youth and invincibility. Olivia was the star of the night, her laughter ringing out as she moved through the crowd. Yet Mia, who watched from a series of social media posts, noticed something others didn't. Olivia's smiles didn't reach her eyes. Her glances over her shoulder were too frequent, her grip on her champagne glass too tight. The next morning, Fairhaven was silent. The news spread like wildfire. Olivia Carter had been found dead in a secluded courtyard on campus. The official story was vague. An accident, they said. But Mia couldn't shake the image of Olivia's tired smile or the tension in her grip at the party. As the school gathered for an emergency assembly, whispers filled the air. How could this happen? She was so perfect. Mia stood on the edge of the crowd, her heart pounding. She didn't know how, but she was certain of one thing. Olivia's death wasn't an accident, and she was going to find out the truth. The day after Olivia's death, Fairhaven Academy transformed. The once lively campus was shrouded in grief, with teachers speaking in hushed tones and students gathering in small, solemn groups. Vigils were organized in the courtyard, where candles flickered in the cool evening breeze, their flames casting shadows that danced across tear-streaked faces. The school released a statement. A tragic accident has claimed the life of one of our brightest stars, Olivia Carter. But the words rang hollow to many. Whispers of doubt began to circulate. Some students swore Olivia wasn't herself in the days leading up to her death. Others claimed to have seen her arguing with a group near the gym after the party. The questions lingered, unspoken but heavy. Was it really an accident? Mia sat at the edge of the courtyard vigil, her gaze shifting from the flickering candles to the crowd of mourners. Something about the scene felt off. The grief seemed genuine, but there were cracks in the facade. A teacher fumbled with his words when a student asked where Olivia had been found. Another brushed off questions about the night of the party. Mia noticed groups of students whispering, their eyes darting nervously toward the staff. Her analytical mind latched onto these discrepancies. In the days that followed, Mia began paying closer attention. She noticed the subtle changes. Friends who once sat together now avoiding each other. Certain students suddenly missing from class. Conversations in the hallway would abruptly end when she walked by. Mia's mind replayed a memory from the day before Olivia's death. It was late afternoon, and they had crossed paths in the library. Olivia had approached her, something she rarely did. "Hey, Mia," Olivia said softly, her voice tinged with an unusual vulnerability. She handed Mia a folded piece of paper. Before Mia could ask, Olivia added, "You're smarter than you think. If something happens to me, follow the light." Then she was gone, leaving Mia clutching the note in confusion. Now, as Mia stared at the piece of paper on her desk, the words felt like a puzzle. Follow the light. What did it mean? Olivia's tone had been foreboding, almost as if she had known what was coming. Desperate for answers, Mia turned to social media. She scrolled through Olivia's recent posts, looking for anything unusual. At first, the pictures seemed typical. Smiling selfies, group photos with her friends, perfectly filtered snapshots of her life. But the captions caught Mia's attention. They were cryptic, almost melancholic. One photo of a sunset read, "Some truths are hidden in plain sight." Another, taken just days before the party, simply said, "Not everything that glitters is gold." Mia's breath caught when she stumbled upon a blurry photo tagged at the party. It showed Olivia in the background, standing with a small group of students. Their faces were partially obscured, but their body language was tense. Olivia looked cornered. Mia began quietly asking questions, careful not to draw attention to herself. Conversations with classmates painted a troubling picture of Olivia's final days. She wasn't herself, a girl from Olivia's cheerleading squad admitted. She was distracted, skipping practices. That's not like her. Another student mentioned Olivia's recent arguments with her closest friends. I think they had a falling out, he whispered. She stopped sitting with them at lunch. Overheard remarks suggested Olivia had been seeking new allies, spending time with students she barely knew. Mia pieced together the fragments. Olivia had been isolated, preoccupied, and under pressure. As Mia dug deeper, a name kept surfacing in hushed conversations. The Circle. It wasn't an official club, not something listed in the school yearbook or on the website. It was whispered about, almost like an urban legend. The Circle was said to be an exclusive group of students who operated in secrecy, bound by rituals that cemented their loyalty and influence. "They're just rumors," one student shrugged when Mia asked. But the unease in his voice betrayed him. Mia learned that Olivia had been seen with members of the Circle in the weeks leading up to her death. The whispers grew darker, suggestions of strange rituals and dangerous initiations. Mia stood in her bedroom, her desk covered in notes, photos, and scribbled questions. The cryptic note Olivia had given her lay in the center, its meaning still elusive. Despite her introverted nature, Mia felt a growing sense of determination. Olivia had reached out to her for a reason. She had trusted Mia with something important, something dangerous. Mia's instincts told her she was onto something big, but the deeper she dug, the more the stakes became personal. If the Circle was involved in Olivia's death, then Mia wasn't just uncovering a mystery. She was walking into the spotlight. The thought chilled her, but she pushed it aside. Someone had to find the truth. And Mia wasn't going to let Olivia's story be silenced. Mia's investigation into the Circle started with whispers. The group was known as a prestigious academic club, an exclusive society that handpicked the brightest, most influential students at Fairhaven Academy. On the outside, the Circle was admired, respected, a ticket to future success, a mark of excellence. But the more Mia dug, the more she realized that this shiny image barely scratched the surface. Mia approached a former member one chilly afternoon, sitting down at a quiet cafe after school. Her heart raced as she nervously stirred her iced coffee, preparing for the conversation. "So, the Circle. What's it really like?" Mia asked, trying to sound casual, though her voice trembled slightly. The former member, a tall senior named Rachel, hesitated, her eyes darting nervously around the room. "It's not what you think," she muttered, her voice low. "It's all about power, control. They tell you it's about the future, about influence, but there's always a cost." Rachel's words hung in the air like a warning. But Mia pressed on, her curiosity pushing her deeper into the mystery. The more Mia learned, the clearer it became. The Circle had been around for decades. Its roots stretched back to the very foundation of Fairhaven Academy, quietly supported by powerful alumni who ensured its continued existence. Mia met with another former member, Jason, who reluctantly agreed to speak. He described the Circle as a hidden force, silently endorsed by influential figures within the school's administration. "No one dares to question them," Jason explained, his face pale as if the memories still haunted him. Faculty, alumni, they all know what happens if you do. Mia's heart sank as she pieced together the truth. The circle wasn't just an elite club, it was an institution built on control. Its members lived in constant fear, bound by silence and loyalty, and any resistance was met with ruthless consequences. As Mia delved deeper, the stories grew darker. The initiation rituals were described as intense and harrowing, designed to break down the individual's resistance and forge an unbreakable bond with the circle. Mia's stomach twisted as she heard the details. Rituals that tested physical and mental limits, pushing participants to their breaking point. "You don't leave the ceremony the same person," one former member whispered. "It changes you. It's like they strip everything from you, leaving you with only what they want." It sounded more like a cult than a school club. The more Mia uncovered, the more the pieces of Olivia's story began to align with the chilling rumors. Flashbacks flooded Mia's mind of Olivia, the perfect student, the queen of the cheerleading squad. She had been invited into the circle with open arms, thrilled by the idea of becoming part of something bigger, something powerful. At first, Olivia had seen the initiation as a rite of passage. She believed it would solidify her position at the top of the social ladder, an opportunity to shine even brighter. But as the day of her initiation approached, the excitement began to fade. Mia could almost see it, the growing unease in Olivia's eyes, the subtle shift in her demeanor. She had begun to question what she was getting herself into. "I don't think I can do this," Olivia had confessed to Mia one day, her voice barely above a whisper. "It feels wrong." But by then, Olivia was already too far in. Mia uncovered a harrowing account of Olivia's initiation. It had been nothing like she imagined. The ceremony took place in a secluded part of the school, where members were isolated from the outside world. Olivia had been subjected to a series of grueling physical tests, all designed to break her spirit. The first night, it was like they were stripping me down. Olivia had written in her journal, her words raw and filled with fear. I felt so small, so helpless. The ceremony wasn't just physical, it was psychological. The members were forced to submit, to pledge their loyalty without question. Mia shuddered as she read the details. Olivia had been manipulated. Her every resistance met with psychological torment, until she had no choice but to comply. Mia's investigation uncovered the most painful betrayal of all. Olivia's best friend, Emma, had been the one to push her into the circle. Flashbacks of their friendship were bittersweet, filled with memories of laughter, secrets shared, and moments of genuine connection. But Emma had been the one to coax Olivia into joining the circle, reassuring her that it would bring them both closer to their dreams. "You can't back out now, Liv," Emma had said one night, her voice low and persuasive. "This is our chance." As Olivia struggled with her doubts, Emma's role became clearer. She wasn't just a supportive friend. She was a willing participant in maintaining the circle's control. She used their friendship to manipulate Olivia, pushing her deeper into the web of power and fear. As the days passed, Olivia's resistance grew. She tried to distance herself from the circle, seeking solace in quiet moments and brief conversations with those outside the group. But her efforts to escape were met with brutal retaliation. Mia could sense the growing tension in Olivia's every step, her eyes darting nervously when she passed the circle members, the way she flinched whenever someone mentioned the group's name. Olivia had become a shadow of her former self, trapped between fear and the desire to break free. I can't keep doing this, Olivia had confessed to Mia, her voice barely audible. But if I leave, I don't know what they'll do. Mia felt her heart ache for her friend, knowing that Olivia's attempt to escape was futile. The circle wouldn't let anyone go. Mia pieced together the devastating truth. Olivia's resistance had made her a target, placing her directly in conflict with the circle's leadership. The group's response had been swift and merciless. Olivia had no choice but to comply or face the consequences of defying them. As Mia reflected on Olivia's struggle, she realized the depth of her own complicity. Every time she had remained silent, every moment she had turned away from the truth, she had contributed to the darkness that consumed Olivia. Mia felt the weight of that guilt press down on her. But it also fueled her determination. Olivia's story needed to be heard. The circle's grip had to be broken. The weight of the truth pressed down on Mia's chest like a heavy stone. She lay awake in her bed late that night, staring up at the ceiling as her mind raced. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the streetlights outside her window. Mia's thoughts were anything but silent. Olivia's words echoed in her mind, the cryptic note still clenched tightly in her hand. "You're smarter than you think. If something happens to me, follow the light." What did it mean? And why had Olivia given it to her? Mia knew it wasn't a coincidence. Olivia's death wasn't just a tragic accident. Something darker lurked beneath the surface, and Mia couldn't shake the feeling that she was the one meant to uncover it. But at what cost? Fear gnawed at her. What if she was wrong? What if pursuing the truth led to danger? Her fingers traced the edge of the note as doubt filled her mind. Every time she thought about investigating, the feeling of eyes watching her grew stronger. Someone didn't want the truth to come out. Mia sat up in bed, the cold air from the window sending a chill through her. Her heart pounded, the fear of retribution swirling inside her. What would happen if the circle found out what she was doing? She had seen the power they wielded over everyone at Fairhaven, and that power could crush her just as easily. But then, the memory of Olivia, so brave, so determined, flashed before her eyes. Olivia had been fighting, even at the end. Mia couldn't turn back now. She clenched her fist around the note and whispered to herself, "I have to know the truth." The next day, as Mia walked to class, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, expecting a message from a friend or a classmate. But instead, a chilling text appeared on the screen. "Stop digging. You don't know what you're dealing with." Mia froze in her tracks, her heart skipping a beat. Her eyes scanned the hallway, looking for anyone who might have seen her reaction. The school seemed to be moving in slow motion. The distant chatter of students a stark contrast to the pounding in her ears. The message had no sender, just a random number. Mia's fingers shook as she tapped the screen, reading it over and over again. She should ignore it, she thought. She should let it go. But Mia couldn't. The message felt like a warning, a sign that she was getting closer to something important. And the more she thought about it, the more she realized the danger was real. She shoved the phone back into her pocket and hurried to class, trying to shake the unsettling feeling creeping up her spine. That evening, the messages didn't stop. They came again and again, each more menacing than the last. "Stay away from the circle, Mia. You won't like what happens next." Mia's breath caught in her throat as the fear turned into something else, a cold, simmering anger. Whoever was behind these threats clearly didn't want her to know the truth. But the more they pushed, the more determined she became. She was close. She could feel it in her bones. Mia knew she couldn't do this alone anymore. The threats were getting more personal, and she couldn't ignore them. She needed someone who understood, someone who wasn't afraid to ask the tough questions. That's when Jonah came to mind. Jonah had been Olivia's ex-boyfriend, but that wasn't what drew Mia to him. It was his quiet suspicion, the way he had always looked at the circle with doubt. She remembered the conversations they'd shared, the moments when he'd muttered things like, "There's something wrong with them," or "Olivia wasn't herself near the end." Mia found him after school, sitting alone on the bleachers, staring at the empty football field. The moment he saw her approach, his expression hardened. "Mia," Jonah said, his voice distant. "What do you want?" "I need your help," Mia said, her voice shaky but determined. Jonah raised an eyebrow, his posture stiff. "You're really going after them, huh?" Mia nodded. "I have to. They know something. They're hiding something. Olivia's death wasn't an accident." Jonah was quiet for a moment, staring at her as if trying to decide whether or not he should trust her. Finally he sighed, rubbing his face. "I don't like it," he muttered, "but I've been thinking the same thing. I want to know what happened to her too." With a reluctant nod, he stood up. "All right, let's do this. Together." The first clue came from Jonah. He had been in Olivia's room after her death, going through her things in an attempt to make sense of the chaos she had left behind. After hours of searching, he found something. A small, leather-bound journal hidden beneath her bed. He handed it to Mia that night. "I think she wanted someone to find this," he said quietly. Mia opened the journal carefully, the pages fragile in her hands. She ran her fingers over the ink, Olivia's words leaping off the page. Day after day, Olivia had written about her growing unease, about how the circle had slowly taken over her life. "Something's wrong." One entry read, "They want more from me, more than I'm willing to give." Mia felt a pang in her chest as she read further, her eyes stinging with tears. Olivia had known. She had known something was coming, and she had been trying to escape. Jonah was silent beside her, watching her closely. "We need to find out who did this," he whispered, "before it's too late." As Mia and Jonah pored over the journal, more secrets began to surface. Olivia had written about the initiation ritual, the one she had dreaded. The entries described how the initiates were pushed to their limits, both physically and mentally. "They broke us," Olivia had written one night. "I don't know if I can go through with it anymore." Mia's stomach churned as she read. The ritual wasn't just a test of loyalty, it was something far darker. There were rumors, whispers about its true nature. Mia could feel the weight of the words pressing down on her. Olivia had feared for her life. "This is what killed her," Mia whispered, her voice cracking. "This is why she had to die." Jonah nodded grimly, his face pale. "We need to expose them, Mia. Now." The journal led them deeper into the dark heart of the circle. They found references to the night of Olivia's death, pieces of a story that didn't add up. The ritual had gone too far, Mia realized. It wasn't supposed to end like this. They pieced it together. Olivia's death wasn't an accident. The circle had manipulated the narrative, twisting the facts to protect themselves. Mia felt sick. She had known something wasn't right, but now the truth was undeniable. Olivia had been sacrificed, and the circle had covered it up. "We have to do something," Mia whispered, her voice shaking. Jonah nodded, his eyes dark with resolve. "We will." The truth had never been clearer. Olivia's death had been no accident. It had been murder. A dark, hidden crime carried out by the circle. Mia looked at Jonah, feeling the weight of the evidence in her hands. The truth was out there, and they were going to bring it to light, no matter the cost. Mia took a deep breath. We can't stop now. Olivia deserves justice, and I won't let them get away with it. Jonah's gaze hardened. Neither will I. And together, they made their vow. They would expose the circle, and no matter what it took, they would make sure the truth came out. The school gymnasium was alive with anticipation, transformed for the prestigious annual event that everyone had been buzzing about for months. The students had dressed in the finest clothes, and the air was thick with excitement. It was the night of the founders' ceremony, a night meant to celebrate the best and brightest of Fairhaven Academy. But for Mia, there was no celebration. Her stomach twisted into knots as she paced back and forth in the back corridor, the sound of music and laughter faintly drifting through the walls. The evening was supposed to be about prestige, about power, and for Mia, it was a setup, a trap. Mia's mind was heavy with a single burning question. How was she going to confront Emma? She had practiced what she would say to her. She had even rehearsed the confrontation in the mirror earlier that day, her reflection appearing smaller and more uncertain with each passing minute. The words, "Olivia didn't die by accident," stuck in her throat. The confrontation would make everything real, and there was no turning back. Her eyes darted nervously to Jonah, who stood beside her, arms crossed, a look of concern etched on his face. "You sure about this?" Jonah asked quietly, his voice low and hesitant. Mia nodded, though her heart raced. It has to be done. She has to pay for what she did. Jonah's eyes darkened, and he shook his head slowly. "I'm just saying, Mia, they'll come for you. You don't know what the circle is capable of. I don't want you getting hurt." Mia took a deep breath. "I know, but I can't stand by and let them get away with it. Olivia deserves justice." Her voice wavered but held firm. "And I won't stop until the truth is out." Jonah's gaze softened, but there was still a trace of fear in his eyes. "Just be careful. They'll make sure you regret it if you push too hard." Mia nodded, steeling herself. She could hear Emma's voice already booming through the microphone, rehearsing her speech in the other room. The time was coming. The crowd was starting to gather, and Mia knew her window of opportunity was closing. She had to find Emma, alone. The air was thick with chatter as she moved swiftly through the crowd, her eyes scanning the room. Then she saw her, Emma, standing by the corner of the gym, surrounded by a few members of the circle. Mia's heart pounded as she approached, every step feeling heavier than the last. "Emma," Mia called, her voice sharp. Emma turned, a slow, calculating smile spreading across her face. "Mia," she said, her voice sweet but laced with something darker. "I didn't expect to see you here. What's the matter? You feeling out of place?" Mia swallowed, trying to steady her nerves. "I need to talk to you. Now." Emma raised an eyebrow, her smile widening. "About what?" Mia hesitated, then found her voice. "About Olivia. About what you and the circle did to her." Emma's eyes narrowed, the mask of sweetness slipping, just for a moment. "What exactly are you implying, Mia?" "I know what happened. I know it wasn't an accident." Mia pressed, her voice gaining strength. "Olivia died because of you." Emma let out a soft, almost pitying laugh. "You really think I had anything to do with that?" Her gaze hardened, and she took a slow step forward. her tone dropping to something colder. "You're treading on dangerous ground, Mia. You don't know who you're messing with." Mia stood her ground, despite the wave of fear washing over her. "I'm not afraid of you." Emma's smile vanished, replaced by an icy stare. "You should be." Her voice was a quiet warning, like a snake preparing to strike. "Keep digging, and you'll regret it. No one goes against the circle and comes out unscathed." The threat hung in the air like a fog, thick with menace. Mia's heart raced, but she didn't flinch. "I'll find the truth," Mia said, her voice steady. "And when I do, you won't get away with it." Emma's eyes flickered with something darker, an emotion Mia couldn't quite place, before she turned. Her words final. "You've been warned." Later that evening, as the ceremony continued, Jonah made his move. He had been watching Emma closely all night, his suspicions about her growing stronger. He knew she was hiding something, and when she stepped away for a moment to talk to one of the circle members, Jonah saw his chance. His heart thudded in his chest as he slipped through the crowd, his fingers nimble as he snatched Emma's phone from her unattended purse. He had no idea what he was looking for, but he knew there was something on that phone that could prove Mia was right. The screen unlocked easily, a testament to Emma's arrogance. He scrolled through the messages, photos, and apps until he stumbled upon a video file. It was labeled simply, "Ritual." His breath caught in his throat. Hesitation lingered for a moment, but he pushed it aside. Jonah tapped play. What he saw made his stomach twist with disgust. The video began with dimly lit footage of a room filled with shadows. The muffled sounds of chanting echoed, and there, in the center, was Olivia, her face terrified. She was bound to a chair, forced to endure what could only be described as a twisted initiation ritual. Her body trembled as circle members circled her, their faces hidden in the darkness. Jonah's heart stopped as he watched Olivia struggle, her eyes pleading for help, but none came. And then, her final moments. The video cut abruptly, leaving only silence. His hands trembled as he stared at the screen, horrified. This wasn't an accident. This was murder. Jonah found Mia later that night, his hands shaking as he showed her the video. Her face drained of color as she watched. Her hands clutched the phone tightly, her body rigid. I don't know what to say," Mia whispered, her voice breaking. It's not just what we thought. It's worse. So much worse." The weight of the truth hit her like a freight train. Olivia had been betrayed. By Emma. By the circle. Mia could feel her resolve faltering, the fear of what would come next seeping into her bones. "What do we do?" Mia asked, her voice strained. Jonah's eyes were filled with a quiet determination. "We expose them. We have to. No matter the cost." Mia looked down at the screen. Olivia's face burned into her memory. She couldn't let Olivia's death be in vain. Mia made a choice. She wasn't afraid anymore. The day of the assembly arrived. The gymnasium was packed with students buzzing with anticipation. Mia stood at the back of the room, her hands shaking as she clutched the phone, the video ready to be shown. Her heart raced as she watched Emma standing at the front, ready to give her speech, completely unaware of what was coming. Mia's breath caught as she approached the microphone, her mind swirling with doubt and determination. Just as Emma began to speak, Mia stepped forward, her voice ringing out across the room. "Wait, I have something to show you all." The room fell silent as Mia pushed play on the phone. The video filled the screen, showing Olivia in her final moments, helpless and terrified. Gasps filled the room as the shocking footage unfolded. Emma's face drained of color, and she opened her mouth to speak. But the truth was already out. Emma's once impenetrable facade shattered. Her classmates stared at her, eyes wide with shock. She tried to regain control, but her voice faltered. This is a lie. She looked desperately at the circle members, but none of them came to her aid. Someone must have doctored the video, the crowd murmured, and Mia saw the first signs of doubt begin to creep into Emma's perfect mask. The room erupted in chaos. Students stood, shouting, some in disbelief, others in horror. The truth had been exposed. The circle, once untouchable, was now a house of cards, its foundation crumbling. Mia felt a strange mix of relief and fear. She had done it. She had exposed the truth, but now the real danger was just beginning. In the aftermath, Mia stood alone, the echoes of the assembly still ringing in her ears. Olivia's face flashed in her mind. Mia would make sure she wasn't forgotten. And as long as she was breathing, she would keep fighting for the truth. The day after the school assembly, the atmosphere at Fairhaven Academy was thick with tension. Whispers of the scandal spread like wildfire. Parents were outraged, the media was in a frenzy, and the administration had no choice but to take action. Principal Carter stood at the front of the school's auditorium, his face pale, a deep frown creasing his forehead. He had always prided himself on maintaining the school's image as a bastion of excellence. But now, everything was crumbling before him. Mia, I know this isn't easy for you, he began, addressing the student body in a somber tone. But I want to make it clear that the school is taking this very seriously. Mia sat in the front row, her heart pounding. She had exposed the truth, but she hadn't anticipated the weight of the aftermath. The truth had shattered everything. As of today, Emma Kingsley and several other senior members of the circle have been expelled. Principal Carter continued, his voice faltering slightly. A full investigation will be conducted into how this organization operated within our school, and we will ensure that any and all necessary steps are taken. Mia's eyes narrowed as she heard the murmurs around her. Some students looked relieved, while others whispered in disbelief. The school was finally taking responsibility, but part of her couldn't shake the feeling that the full scope of the damage was yet to be revealed. The investigation had only just begun, but the damage was already done. The circle's dark grip on the school had been exposed, and there was no going back. The following days were a whirlwind. Emma and the other circle members were removed from the school, their names wiped from the social scene, like they had never existed. The students who had once cowered before the circle now watched, with a mix of relief and awe, as their former leaders were reduced to pariahs. Mia couldn't help but feel a sense of justice as she saw Emma being escorted out of the school, her once pristine reputation shattered beyond repair. But as the circle crumbled, so did the carefully constructed world Mia had once inhabited. Her peers looked at her with new eyes, some with admiration, others with suspicion. Mia had been a part of their world too, and now everything had changed. The former members of the circle, once at the top of the social hierarchy, found themselves ostracized. Some were left to face disciplinary actions, their futures uncertain. Others simply disappeared, retreating into the shadows from which they had once held so much power. But the damage was far-reaching. The influence that the circle had wielded for so long had left deep scars in the school's culture. Now, the administration was forced to implement stricter policies to ensure that something like this could never happen again. Secretive groups like the Circle were banned, and the school began to shift its focus toward transparency and openness. Mia couldn't help but feel the weight of the changes. The school was moving forward, but what about the parts of the story that had been left untold? Mia sat alone in the quiet of the library, her fingers tracing the edges of a book she had once shared with Olivia. She hadn't expected to feel so empty. The truth had come out, and Emma had been exposed, but something still gnawed at her. As she sat there, memories of Olivia's smile, her laughter, her cryptic notes all swirled in her mind. Mia had done it. She had uncovered the truth, and Emma had paid the price for her cruelty. But Olivia was gone, and Mia would never hear her voice again. A deep ache filled Mia's chest. Olivia had been her friend, and she had been taken away too soon. It was because of Olivia that Mia had found the courage to act, to stand up against the darkness that had consumed the school. She thought about how far she had come, from a quiet observer to someone who had brought down an entire secret society. The strength she had found in herself amazed her, but it was bittersweet. She had lost so much along the way. "I did it for you," Mia whispered, her voice breaking. "I hope you're proud of me." But there was no answer, just the silence of the library and the weight of her grief. Later that day, Mia found herself standing at her locker, a sense of unease creeping up her spine. It was almost time to leave for the day, but something felt off. Her fingers absent-mindedly sifted through the textbooks in her bag, when something caught her eye. Tucked between the pages of one of Olivia's old books, she found a folded piece of paper. Her heart skipped a beat as she pulled it out, recognizing Olivia's handwriting immediately. Mia unfolded the note carefully, her eyes scanning the cryptic words. "The roots run deeper than you think. Be careful where you dig." A cold shiver ran down her spine. The words seemed to echo in her mind, a warning, a threat that she hadn't expected. The circle was gone. The truth had been exposed. Or had it? Mia felt a chill crawl up her arms. What did Olivia mean by this? Was there more to the story than she had uncovered? Was the circle only the surface? And had she unearthed something even darker? Her mind raced as she looked around the hallway, her heart pounding. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, something she hadn't fully understood yet. The school bell rang, signaling the end of the day, but Mia didn't feel like celebrating. She stood there in the hallway, the cryptic note burning in her hands. The justice she had fought for was in her grasp, but there was still a shadow lingering over her. As Mia walked out of the school building, the weight of her actions settled heavily on her shoulders. She had exposed the truth. She had fought for Olivia. The circle was no more, and the school had taken action. For now, it seemed like everything was in its place. But the note, Olivia's final words, reminded her that things weren't always as simple as they seemed. As Mia stepped into the cool evening air, she looked back at the school. The darkness that had once consumed it was now only a faint memory. But how much of it had truly been erased? Was there still something lurking, waiting to rise again? Mia didn't have the answers, but she knew one thing for sure. Her journey wasn't over. The story of the circle had been exposed, but the roots, as Olivia had warned, ran deeper than anyone could have imagined. And Mia was still digging. As she walked away, The weight of uncertainty followed her, the lingering question haunting her every step. Would the darkness ever truly be gone?